The streets of Jacksonville remain in chaos following Foolio's shocking death, and the question on everyone's mind is, who's winning the battle for control? What began as grief and shock has transformed into a high-stakes struggle for dominance, with rival factions jostling to fill the void left by one of the city's most influential figures. Every corner, every block, and every interaction now carries tension, as the fight for territory, respect, and influence escalates. The city is no longer just mourning a loss. It's witnessing a power struggle that could redefine the landscape of Jacksonville's streets and music scene for years to come. Foolio's legacy was more than just music. It was power, respect, and fear wrapped into one. His passing left a vacuum, and every crew, ally, and rival is maneuvering for position. Some are retaliating, others are consolidating, and a few are quietly plotting to seize what remains unclaimed. Social media has turned into a war zone of its own, with posts, videos, and cryptic messages amplifying the tension and broadcasting the stakes far beyond Jacksonville's borders. The battle for control is as strategic as it is dangerous. Loyalty is tested, alliances are formed and broken, and every move could trigger retaliation or solidify dominance. Even neutral players, residents, businesses, and fans feel the pressure as the streets become unpredictable and violence looms over everyday life. Analysts and insiders alike are debating who has the upper hand, who's vulnerable, and who could ultimately emerge as the new kingpins of Jacksonville. As the conflict continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the outcome is far from certain. Each faction is playing a dangerous game of strategy, influence, and survival. The city is watching closely, knowing that the next series of moves could shift the balance of power entirely. In a war where respect, legacy, and dominance are at stake, every decision counts, and the battle for Jacksonville's control is far from over. Foolio's sudden death left Jacksonville reeling, and the immediate aftermath revealed just how much influence he had commanded. His presence had extended far beyond the music scene, reaching into the streets where alliances, respect, and fear dictated power. With him gone, a vacuum formed, a space that rival crews and emerging players were eager to fill. The city, once carefully balanced by Foolio's dominance, now teetered on the edge of chaos. Every neighborhood, corner, and intersection became a potential battleground, as factions jostled for territory, influence, and control over resources once governed by his network. The initial days following the news were tense but measured, with each group assessing strengths, weaknesses, and potential opportunities. Loyalists to Foolio quickly moved to consolidate power, protect key allies, and safeguard his legacy. Meanwhile, rival factions saw the vacuum as a rare chance to claim dominance, testing the limits of their rival's organization. Rumors of alliances forming and breaking spread rapidly through both street networks and social media, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and high stakes. The city itself seemed to pulse with tension, every interaction charged with the potential for conflict. As social media exploded with speculation, videos, posts, and cryptic messages became tools of both intimidation and information. Rival crews flaunted strength, announced movements, and tested loyalties, all while the public watched in shock and anticipation. Fans mourned Foolio, but the streets and music networks were moving on a different timeline, one where power and reputation demanded immediate action. Analysts began dissecting patterns, speculating on who would emerge as the dominant force and which factions were vulnerable. The balance of control was fluid, shifting daily with every confrontation, negotiation, or show of strength. Even local businesses, schools, and community hubs felt the impact. Events were postponed, and security measures increased as violence and tension spread beyond the usual hotspots. Residents grew wary of streets they once navigated freely, knowing that the struggle for control could erupt at any moment. Foolio's absence forced the city to reckon with its underlying dynamics, exposing rivalries, ambitions, and grudges that had previously been kept in check. The stakes were no longer just personal. They were public, and everyone connected to the scene was aware that survival and influence now depended on calculated moves. By the end of the first week, it was clear that Jacksonville had entered a new era of instability. Foolio's death had created a battlefield where alliances, strategy, and reputation mattered as much as firepower. Every faction was playing a high-stakes game, aware that missteps could cost territory, credibility, or even lives. The city was bracing for what many feared would be an extended conflict, a war for control that would reshape Jacksonville's streets, music scene, and community dynamics in ways that would be felt for years to come. As the second week unfolded, Jacksonville's streets grew increasingly tense. Rival factions moved quickly to assert dominance, testing boundaries and pushing for control over neighborhoods previously influenced by Foolio and his crew. The city became a patchwork of alliances, with each group attempting to expand its influence while guarding against retaliatory strikes. Reports of armed confrontations, standoffs, and street-level skirmishes began emerging, showing that the battle for control was no longer just a rumor. It was unfolding in real time. Every interaction, every public appearance, and every post on social media carried potential consequences, raising the stakes for everyone involved. Foolio's loyalists focused on consolidating territory and safeguarding key allies. Strategy became their strongest weapon. They used intelligence, surveillance, and precise timing to maintain an edge over rivals. Meanwhile, competing crews sought opportunities to exploit weaknesses, testing responses and probing for gaps in defenses. The city became a complex chessboard, with each faction making moves and countermoves, calculating risks, and preparing for possible escalations. Loyalty was constantly evaluated, and trust was a rare commodity. One wrong move could lead to devastating losses, making every decision critical. Social media played a major role in amplifying tensions. Cryptic posts, videos of territorial displays, and messages challenging rival crews spread rapidly, often escalating conflicts before physical confrontations even occurred. Residents watched in fear, knowing that online displays frequently translated into real-world violence. Analysts and insiders dissected these digital interactions, predicting where clashes might occur and which factions were gaining the upper hand. Public perception became as important as street-level strength, with reputation and influence shaping alliances and deterring potential attacks. The impact on daily life in Jacksonville was palpable. Businesses implemented heightened security, and events were canceled or postponed as uncertainty gripped the city. Neighborhoods that had once been safe hubs of community activity now operated under a cloud of caution. Even those not directly involved in the conflict were forced to navigate a city where tension and violence could erupt at any moment. The struggle for control extended beyond the streets. It affected the social, cultural, and economic fabric of Jacksonville, showing how intertwined power and daily life had become. By the end of this phase, it was clear that the battle for control was escalating rapidly. Each faction had demonstrated strength, strategy, and a willingness to push boundaries, making it difficult to predict who would gain the upper hand. The city's power dynamics were shifting daily, creating a climate of uncertainty, fear, and anticipation. As tensions mounted, one thing became certain. Jacksonville had entered a critical period where the next moves would determine which crews would dominate, which would falter, and who would ultimately control the legacy left by Foolio. By the third week, Jacksonville was no longer just tense. It was erupting into open conflict. Rival factions began clashing head-on, turning streets, neighborhoods, and key junctions into high-stakes battle zones. The death of Foolio had ignited a war that stretched beyond personal vendettas. It was now a fight for dominance, influence, and survival. Every group understood that control over territory meant not only power but also protection of their networks and resources. Skirmishes became more frequent, and reports of injuries, property damage, and near-miss encounters highlighted just how volatile the city had become. Foolio's loyalists adopted a more aggressive yet strategic approach, using intelligence and knowledge of the city to anticipate rival movements. Checkpoints, coded communications, and careful positioning became critical tools in their arsenal. At the same time, opposing crews pushed forward, testing defenses and seeking weaknesses in the organization of Foolio's allies. Every confrontation was a calculated risk, and both sides understood that missteps could lead to devastating consequences. The balance of power was constantly shifting, with victories and losses impacting morale and the broader perception of strength across the city. Social media amplified the intensity of the conflict. Videos of street clashes, cryptic posts, and flaunted territorial claims circulated rapidly, adding pressure on both participants and onlookers. Every message had the potential to spark retaliation or consolidate dominance. Residents and community leaders were caught in the crossfire, forced to navigate streets that had become unpredictable and dangerous. Analysts and insiders began tracking patterns of movement, identifying which factions were consolidating power and which were becoming vulnerable, giving the city a sense of a living, breathing war map. The ripple effects of the conflict reached every corner of Jacksonville. Local businesses adjusted operations, schools heightened security, and community events were postponed or canceled. The music and entertainment scene, previously a thriving hub for artists and fans alike, now faced interruptions as the city's instability made gatherings unsafe. Even those not directly involved in the conflict were aware that survival depended on caution and vigilance, highlighting just how deeply Foolio's death had disrupted the fabric of the city. By the end of the third week, Jacksonville was in the grip of a citywide crisis. Control over neighborhoods, alliances, and influence was constantly contested, and no faction could afford complacency. Every move carried high stakes, and the next series of confrontations promised to be even more intense and decisive. The battle for dominance had become the defining story of the city, setting the stage for a climactic showdown where strategy, loyalty, and courage would determine who truly controlled the streets and the legacy left behind by Foolio. By the fourth week, Jacksonville had become a city on edge. Rival factions were no longer testing boundaries. They were executing coordinated attacks to assert dominance. Streets, corners, and even public spaces became contested zones, where the slightest provocation could spark a confrontation. The balance of power, once dominated by Foolio's presence, was now fluid and unpredictable. Every faction knew that control over key neighborhoods meant influence over both the streets and the city's music scene, making each move critical for survival and reputation. Foolio's loyalists had shifted from reactive defense to proactive strategy. Using intelligence gathered from trusted allies, they anticipated rival movements, secured vulnerable locations, and strengthened alliances. Their approach combined caution with aggression, ensuring that every response had maximum impact while minimizing exposure. Opposing crews, however, were equally determined, launching bold maneuvers to expand territory and test the cohesion of Foolio's network. Each clash was a high-stakes gamble, where miscalculations could result in devastating consequences, not only for territory but also for reputation and influence. Social media continued to fuel the conflict, serving as both a warning system and a platform for intimidation. Posts showcasing territorial gains, cryptic threats, or retaliatory actions circulated rapidly, often escalating real-world tensions. Videos of confrontations drew widespread attention, turning street battles into a public spectacle. Residents, businesses, and even artists navigated a city where appearances, both online and in person, could dictate the outcome of power struggles. The pressure to maintain dominance and manage perception added another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. As tensions escalated, temporary alliances and betrayals became increasingly common. Smaller crews aligned with larger factions for strategic advantages, while some former allies switched sides in hopes of gaining leverage. Trust became a rare commodity, with every interaction scrutinized for hidden motives. For Foolio's loyalists, the stakes were personal as well as strategic. They were defending not just territory but the legacy of one of Jacksonville's most influential figures. Every victory or setback had the power to reshape the city's hierarchy, making each decision a matter of life, death, or reputation. By the end of the fourth week, Jacksonville had entered a critical phase. The war for control had intensified to the point where the next confrontations would likely determine the dominant faction in the city. Every corner, block, and neighborhood was charged with tension, and the stakes extended far beyond immediate survival. The city was bracing for the ultimate clashes, where strategy, loyalty, and power would collide, and the outcome would set the stage for the final reckoning in the aftermath of Foolio's death. The question remained, who would ultimately emerge victorious in this war for Jacksonville? As the war in Jacksonville reached its peak, the city was engulfed in a series of decisive confrontations that would determine control once and for all. Rival factions faced off in strategic locations, executing coordinated attacks and defenses with precision. Foolio's loyalists, hardened by weeks of conflict and motivated by the need to protect his legacy, remained focused and organized. Opposing crews, driven by ambition and opportunity, pushed aggressively to claim territory, but every move was met with calculated resistance. The streets became a stage for strategy, courage, and resilience, where the outcome of each clash carried long-term consequences for influence and survival. The decisive phase tested loyalty, intelligence, and adaptability. Foolio's allies leveraged their deep knowledge of the city and past rival patterns to anticipate attacks and control key zones. Every confrontation was measured, with strategic retreats and calculated strikes ensuring maximum impact while limiting losses. Rival factions, despite their numbers and boldness, began to encounter setbacks, as their attempts to seize power were consistently countered. The balance of power tipped gradually, with each successful defense strengthening Foolio's loyalist dominance and sending a clear message to would-be challengers. Social media, which had fueled much of the tension, now mirrored the reality on the streets. Videos of battles, territorial control, and demonstrations of dominance spread rapidly, further consolidating the perception that Foolio's loyalists were emerging as the controlling force. Public attention, both local and national, focused on the unfolding events, analyzing alliances, strategies, and outcomes. Residents and businesses, while still cautious, began to sense a shift toward stability, as dominant factions established clear lines of control and enforced their influence. The city, though scarred, started to regain a sense of order under the emerging hierarchy. By the end of the conflict, the dominant faction had clearly asserted control over Jacksonville. Foolio's loyalists had protected his legacy while consolidating power, demonstrating that strategy, leadership, and unity were decisive in a war where brute force alone was insufficient. Rival factions, while still present, had either retreated, reconciled, or recalibrated their positions, acknowledging the new order. The war had reshaped the city, solidified reputations, and set new standards for loyalty, strategy, and influence within the streets and music scene. Ultimately, the war in Jacksonville after Foolio's death became a defining chapter in the city's history. It highlighted the volatility of power vacuums, the consequences of rivalry, and the value of intelligence and coordination in high-stakes conflicts. The city bore the scars of confrontation, but it also emerged with a clearer hierarchy and reinforced respect for leadership and legacy. Foolio's influence remained a guiding force, his absence felt but his impact undeniable. Jacksonville had survived, and the outcome of the battle for control would shape its streets, alliances, and culture for years to come. The war in Jacksonville following Foolio's death has reshaped the city, its streets, and its power dynamics. Rival factions clashed, alliances shifted, and the fight for control tested loyalty, strategy, and courage at every turn. Foolio's loyalists ultimately emerged as the dominant force, consolidating influence while protecting his legacy, proving that leadership, intelligence, and unity matter as much as strength. For Jacksonville, the conflict was a stark reminder of how power vacuums can ignite chaos, but it also showed that order can be restored when strategy and respect guide actions. The streets may bear scars, and the memories of clashes will linger, but the hierarchy has been set, and the message is clear. Survival and dominance require more than just ambition. They require foresight, resilience, and loyalty. Follow the unfolding story closely, witness every move, and see how Jacksonville continues to navigate the aftermath of this defining battle.